Nevertheless, speaking of assholes, Brian, just real quickly, wouldn't you know who won the pony? Can we be entertaining today or tell jokes, or is that now illegal in the United States of Trumpistan? Can we still have fun and laugh, or do we have to wait until the government lets us know?
I think we're safe.
I don't know the protocol.
I think we're safe. We're not on broadcast TV.
Well, we don't need a license for what we do. We're completely unlicensed.
Uh-oh.
Oh
my God. Oh, it's the federal government. Oh my God.
Please don't answer it while I'm on the phone. The gas may come through the fucking line.
I've hung up. If I'm not here in a few minutes, I've hung up.
Anyway, we'll talk a little bit lower so not as many people can hear us.
Oh my God.
We don't need to be licensed here since we're just two guys doing podcasts, man. But if you're one of the former celebrities in the broadcast industry where your corporate company parent makes billions of dollars and wants to have a merger with another company that makes billions of dollars, you better just stick to goddamn reading what they want you to read. Now, for the international folks out there around the world that still live in somewhat free societies with a thing called freedom of speech that listen to the program outside the borders of the United States of America, we said a few months ago, or however long it's been, they canceled the Stephen Colbert show on, I believe it was CBS. He was on CBS because...
Still is for the next...
well, he still is. It's been canceled, but he's still on. But because Dear Leader didn't like what he was saying. And, they said, well, the show's losing money. But let's be honest, Brian, you can't even argue with this. If you canceled the show or contract of everybody in entertainment or sports today that is overpaid, we wouldn't have nothing to watch.
Absolutely.
Fair statement?
Oh, that's a very fair statement.
All right. But all of a sudden, when you know who won the pony? Stephen Colbert, because he's been mocking Schittler and his band of merry henchmen the whole way. And I mentioned at the time, facts and logic and reason and evidence and video and audio and testimony and whatever has not worked. But humor gets under this fucking guy's skin because he's a tiny little man baby with a teeny little peenie. And his ego is so giant, he can't take it. It sends him into a turmoil, but also he knows that it's an effective tool against the thought of him, that it makes people see what a befucking foon he really is and the incompetent people that he has put in charge by just telling the truth about him in a humorous way. He can't take it. So now, folks around the world, on ABC, which, by the way, is owned by Disney, which is owned by who the fuck? I don't even fucking know how far.
Disney's still owned by Disney, but obviously they're trying to do deals because everyone is talking to everyone else. And also broadcast TV, you have, at this point, it's not just people who own networks, or people who own stations. It's companies that own a conglomerate of stations.
Yes, that's the point, is all these people, and what is it now? Nexstar is trying to do a merger with Zabada for billions of dollars. And the point is, after Trump crowed about Colbert being canceled, then he said Jimmy Kimmel's going to be next, because for a long time now, Jimmy Kimmel has been telling the truth and making fun of Schittler and his various associates. And again, we just found out Jimmy Kimmel has been indefinitely suspended. His program will not air right after the chairman of the FCC, who was appointed by the current president, came out and said This is terrible to allow these type of comments. And I think we ought to pull some of these TV stations that are affiliated with ABC's broadcast licenses. In other words, we, the government, are going to look into pulling the station's licenses and shutting them down because the guy on their air said something we don't like. And then also the company that owns a bunch of stations that is also goddamn wanting to own more stations that wants the merger. Well, golly, we're not going to air these programs. It's against the public interest. It's against your fucking bank account interest.
You saw the other company that got involved in terms of companies that own a lot of stations, right?
Sinclair. Sinclair, our old friends at Sinclair Broadcasting. Because the guy that owned that thing and their whole administration is a bunch of right-wing fanatics, which I wasn't even aware of at the time. I'd never heard of Sinclair Broadcasting before Gary Jester said, hey, I know a guy that works in it. But nevertheless, the point is, so they decide, and not only did they decide to suspend his show indefinitely, because basically they took it seriously that all of these affiliate stations may be at risk of losing their license from the FCC, which is controlled by the current administration. But they got death threats after this fucking guy, the FCC chair, Brendan Carr is his name. They were getting death threats called into Disney and the people that work at the Jimmy Kimmel show. Because these people believe anything that's put out in that fucking bizarro world they live in. And they feel like they got to take action on it. But nevertheless, the point is freedom of speech.
Well, let me just say, though, irrespective of the overall issues of, Trump trying to silence his critics, I do think Jimmy Kimmel fucked up and made a really ignorant comment without having any of the facts. And that's probably what triggered it more than just him ranting against Trump in terms of him specifically, not that Trump's not trying to silence all these people.
He was waiting for the opportunity. Kimmel's next was through 2 months ago. And guess who was next? Kimmel. He was waiting for an excuse that his base would fire up about to fucking put pressure from the guy that he appointed to run the fucking Federal Communications Commission on the networks to fucking take this guy off the air because he tells the truth about him, but he can't stand it because he makes jokes about him at the same time. Did I mention his teeny little ego or his giant ego and teeny little penis? But in what previous presidential administration, going back to the dawn of television, Republican or Democratic, has the president and the FCC actually canceled somebody off the fucking air for saying whatever? And this fucking pig sits on the goddamn couch all the time over at Fox News, where one of their people just said last week, we ought to deal with the homeless by lethal injection.
Yeah, that's insane.
And not phrased in the form of a joke. So what the fuck? It's insane. Trump doesn't want people making fun of him. That's the fucking key. It's all the comedians because they can sway public opinion. The people that think that this fucking guy is a savior instead of a fraud cannot be convinced otherwise by facts. They can't be convinced by evidence. It's been tried for years. But if you make fun of the fucker, everybody laughs, especially when it's all true. And that's the way that we'll get him eventually. And that's why he's doing this right now.
Well, again, I agree that Trump and his administration are doing everything they can to silence critics, but specific with Jimmy Kimmel, and I don't think Jimmy Kimmel or Stephen Colbert are motivating young people or moving young people. It's more just they're making fun of him. He doesn't like it. But with Kimmel, Kimmel, who doesn't have a big audience, should have known better too. He basically gave them what they needed to get rid of him.
Okay, go ahead. I'm sorry.
So I think that's, part of the thing too. If Jimmy Kimmel had 10 million viewers a night, and I know that's an impossibility in the modern day world for any late night show to have that unless someone really took off like Steve Austin or something. Like no one's getting those kind of numbers. Then maybe someone would fight on his behalf on whether it's the network or anyone else because he was bringing so much money in. But, when you have a small audience and you know that they're out for you, you know that the administration does not like you and hasn't for a while and has made it pretty clear that they're coming for you, you should probably also be extra careful. I'm not saying that's right. I don't think that's right.
But see, that's
it's
also
the reality
what
of the situation.
That's also what they want. They want people, because we cancel a couple of the names, then everybody else will fall in line and the TV stations will be scared and they're going to lose their license. That's what they want. But with Kimmel, I'm sure he thought just what you said. He don't give a fuck, because it wasn't just that show. He hosted the fucking Oscars. He just won the Emmy for hosting a primetime. Oh, the goddamn Who Wants to Be a Millionaire remake, revamp, whatever. And that was a primetime show. And the last contract he signed, they had to talk him into it. And he was joking about, like, I'd like to quit anytime just because he's got fuck you money. And other people,
but he doesn't have an audience. That's the point.
But if another network has any balls, they would immediately put him on something, because they're getting the host of the Oscars, for fuck's sake.
See, that's the interesting thing.
They're getting a fucking guy that's seen by tens of millions of people at some point because of the numerous things he does. But they've also got a guy who, if nobody hires him, he can do whatever he wants. He's fucking rich. And that's why he don't give a shit. And that's why he was telling the fucking truth.
Well, I think a lot of these guys like having the forum, and that's going to be the interesting thing. I don't think another network's going to take a chance, at least right now, on any of these people. For the next few years, I don't think they will. Where will they go? Will it be a Netflix? Will it be something like that? It's going to be interesting. I wish Trump had started with Fallon, because he's been the biggest offender of bad comedy and bad weak. Let's hug celebrities and everything's wonderful and let's just all smile. That brand of fucking late night talk show, which ruined late night talk. Letterman and Craig Ferguson left, and then late night talk died, and here's where we are. But
and Letterman ain't a fan of this. No, did you see what he said?
I did see that, because coincidentally enough, he was speaking at like some conference when all this happened. I don't even know what the conference was, but the bearded David Letterman, who, he said all the things you would expect him to say if you ever watched his show.
And it's a ridiculous affront to the supposed free speech that these clowns have been advocating for, which they advocate for the free speech from their side when it's bullshit. But when you fact check them or give them some of their own shit back, that's horrible.
On both sides, though, I do think both sides conflate free speech with, there's a difference between standing outside and saying whatever you want, or going on Twitter and saying what you want, and going on someone else's airwaves and saying it, because you're not going to get in trouble. They'll get in trouble. I remember when Howard Stern, when he was still a great radio show host years and years ago, when the FCC came after him, I believe it wasn't really about him. They came after the company. And, people thought at the time, because if they fuck with the company and give him fines, they'll drop him. That was the philosophy. The FCC fucking with people isn't a new thing. People being censored for saying what their audience, like the Smothers Brothers. I mean, people don't even bring them up in the context of all this, but the Nixon administration made sure that the Smothers Brothers got off the air.
Yeah, I appreciate your Stern analogy, but at the same time, we're not talking about people that are, talking about whipped cream up strippers' pussies or whatever, So the Smothers Brothers comparison is the most apt, I think, because the Nixon administration made sure that they didn't keep swaying those young people with all this fucking truthiness.
It's the most apt in terms of a comparison to the situation. The Howard Stern one is most apt in terms of what kind of damage the FCC can try to do to your company.
But at least then the FCC, it was just run by a bunch of old white stick in the muds that were upset about all this fucking profanity and things and such in that nature, rather than we need to shut this shit down because we're getting away with stuff and these people are telling on us.
Do you know much about the broadcast licenses, how that works? Because obviously that's the big threat. If you don't comply with us, we'll suspend your license or take your license. I don't know exactly how it works, but what goes into having one? Like, there's a difference between broadcast and basic cable, even though in this day and age, usually if you have broadcast, I shouldn't say usually, but a lot of people get it through cable. So it's all like the same bundle in a lot of ways.
Well, hold on here, cowboy. And I'm not prepared to answer your question in depth as a scholarly treatise, and there's nuances to all this stuff, but in basic form, from the time that radio stations and or television stations went on the air, anything where an entity broadcast over the airwaves to the public, and even the not citizens band, but ham radios, as they used to call them, the old radio fanatics that would have radios in their garages. That's why they had to have call letters. They had to have like some type of even home license. This is CK4W5. But you needed to have a license, and gradually the entity that would oversee that became the Federal Communications Commission. And for television, especially, because they looked at TV stations in the early days, not at necessarily as, well, the people who owned them looked at them as profit-making enterprises, but the goal of mankind was for them to be public services for news and entertainment, whatever. So there were things you couldn't just fucking beam people saying fuck you all the time into the goddamn people's homes where the little kiddies could watch, and you couldn't, show graphic sex or people being their heads being chopped off or whatever the fuck that you might be able to get away with on modern day cable or home video. And so if you did things that were against the public interest, or however they phrased it, unacceptable to local standards, they could suspend your license for doing something or fine you. Same thing with radio stations for doing bits that went over the line.
Yeah, and it was always crazy. I'm sure it probably still is now. You don't hear about it as much in terms of the process, but it could literally be someone middle of the day watching you on a talk show, and they're like, I don't like what they said. I'm going to write to the FCC. And if they would, the FCC, if they wanted to fuck with you, they would, and they could.
Well, there was an example. Oh, what was her name? I don't want to call her name anyway. They might embarrass her even after all these years. But in Charlotte, 35 years ago, the morning radio team at a radio station that did the comedy morning radio show, right? They got a phone call. Some dipshit was trying to call their like competitor radio station to be the fifth caller to win the car or whatever. Right? He says, hi, am I the fifth caller to win the car? And they're like, oh yeah, you won the car. Come on down and get it. And did it's a beautiful car. Whatever the fuck, he yanked this guy's chain on the air because the people that were listening to the radio knew that the guy that it was a fuck up, right? But the guy went down to the goddamn dealership or wherever, the other radio station, wherever it was, demanded the car. The other radio station called that radio station. He got him fired off the air. Man. For something that fucking...
I got another example. We talked recently about, and I've had a few people write in and say, what's the real story with how LA lost the English-speaking television? I believe Greg Valentine said something over the line and that was it, but the road to get there, correct me if I'm wrong, you may know this. I believe there was a viewer of Studio Wrestling from LA with Dick Lane that started complaining to the FCC about the local promos being commercials and that they were doing too many commercials in the show, and that got them in trouble. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, I can't again quote chapter and verse, but yes, that was a thing. And it was the same. again, there were regulations in those days. Before that was, you couldn't do an infomercial back in those days because only a set number of minutes per hour on a commercial television station could actually be commercials. You had to, and that's why you see edited versions of all those 50s sitcoms. When you see the DVD version and there's like, I've never seen that before. That used to be like, in those days, maybe 4 minutes per half hour. Now, in modern times, it's 8. But nevertheless, if the commercials went over a certain amount of time, it was against FCC regulations, and a number of wrestling territories got hit. Do you remember in?
Oh, really?
In the day. Okay, you might not know that. Just it was a little subtle thing, but in the days of TBS, the Saturday night show, Georgia Championship Wrestling, when they would do interviews at the desk and then would suddenly go to the 30-second promo with music behind it, the Omni with the graphics. So,
I know what you're
okay. They had to tell the top guys, when you start talking, when you start doing your promo, just talk generally about your opponent or talk about the match or whatever, but don't say anything about the Omni. Don't say anything about, and then at the end of your promo, that's when they jump in and it's going to happen at the Omni. And then they'd cut to that fucking spot, or the graphic would pop up in the middle of their promo when they turn to talk about the Omni. Then the graphic on the screen, the Omni, Sunday night, tickets available, Ticketron. Because they couldn't even make the whole goddamn, if the whole interview had the specifics of the date and the place, that was considered a commercial. So they had to make it that fine for a couple of years there on the Georgia show. It was fucking insane.
It's interesting, though, just because it is a hard line. You know, if you watch a 90-minute Memphis show, so much of that show is a commercial for Memphis that Monday night.
Jesus Christ, one segment, what might be 15 minutes on the Monday night card with guys coming out and going and things. It was just, but nobody ever complained. They might have had a problem. I don't know.
I complained when I got the 60-minute show. I said, where's all that stuff I missed?
But anyway, nevertheless, we're going to be missing a lot of stuff. Apparently, I'll just close with that, because either that or, as is already happening, a bunch of people can be really more people are pissed off about Kimmel than they were about Colbert, and it's starting to become a cumulative thing and a little bit obvious. So maybe they'll be able to tamp this down. But when you've got the alleged leader of the free world threatening the broadcasting entities or the talent on the broadcasting entities in the country he's supposed to be running because they're taking the piss out of him, it doesn't ever seem to end well historically.
And I think the censorship is wrong. I think people being penalized for these things, it's fine to penalize people for them not making money or ratings or whatever, but this is bullshit. However, if it's going to happen, now's the time to remake late night TV. Let's get some real craziness in there once again. Let's get rid of all the glam and the happiness and the, hey, let's just hang out with celebrities and talk about nothingness. This is a chance, but that won't happen either.
What kind of cutting edge comedy or commentary do you think that people are going to want to get on TV now and talk about? Huh?
Hey, listen.
What do you think? Just in case they might tick somebody off.
There's only one person you have to worry about taking off. If you could take off everyone else and survive, it seems like. But, yeah, I miss the old days of late night TV.